Hello everybody, I'm Alexei Krabrov, the organizer of Bay Area AI Meetup, and here we're on location at CrowdFlower, a very well-known company which does human-in-the-loop computing, and we have Lukas Biewald, founder and chief scientist, with us here.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lukas, for hosting us.
My pleasure.
So, a lot of folks heard about CrowdFlower, and recently I've seen you guys are doing a lot of talks about AI. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us briefly what is CrowdFlower, how it evolved into the kind of center of the AI discussions which we have right now?
Sure. So I started CrowdFlower because I was actually working in AI, and it was a tool that I really wanted mm-hmm. that didn't exist, right? So what CrowdFlower does is help people get training data, and then help people do human in the loop, mm-hmm. It was like 7-8 years ago, I guess, now that I started it, and basically everywhere I went, I wanted to build real machine learning models that really worked in the real world, and everywhere I went, the bottleneck was just getting the training data, mm-hmm. right? So that's just like, it's like the most simple thing. It's like the thing that you don't think about the most, but if you actually want to build machine learning, it's often your biggest problem, mm-hmm. And so. We started it around getting people training data, and then we realized that the next biggest thing holding people back is a lot of times their model's only 80% accurate, which often isn't good enough for a lot of real world processes. Mm-hmm. But if you only use the cases where the model is good, then almost by definition you have a useful model.
Yes.
And so we realized we could help a lot of our customers actually deploy things and really do things by adding a human loop component to our software. And so so that's how we ended up where we are today.
So I remember using CrowdFlower when I was at Cloud, 2012. It was already kind of a go-to place to do, this kind of specialized, annotation, right? And then, obviously, Mechanical Turk is kind of the flagship of this kind of services. So can you tell us a little bit how you guys evolved from, those years in today, and how you're different from Mechanical Turk and kind of other services?
Sure. Well, I'm surprised that you'd say Mechanical Turk is the flagship. I would have to disagree with that.
Let's say historical first.
Maybe like the dinosaur.
Okay.
How do we evolve from 2011? I actually don't think. I think if you looked at our product, you would. You would see that a lot of the kind of bones of it are very similar to what was happening in 2011. But I think what's really changed is the market has clarified itself, right? Mm-hmm. So if you were doing machine learning in 2011, there were probably a lot less people doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And so at that time we just didn't have the same customer base. We didn't have the company just wasn't as big because the market hadn't taken off in the way that. It has now, right? So, I don't think there's huge differences between CrowdFlower now and CrowdFlower in 2011, but I think all the little details are the difference between kind of the low NPS that we had now and the really high NPS that we have today, mm-hmm. Because of we now have the resources to get all the details right and actually make the product really good for our customers. Mm-hmm.
So I noticed you guys, you become the platform, right? So can you tell us a little bit, in what sense you are the platform for AI?
Well, I wouldn't say we're the platform for AI. Well, I guess we're a platform for AI. Mm-hmm. I think I like to think of ourselves as the essential missing tools for AI. I mean, what's funny is the AI is kind of the least important part of our platform in a way, right? I think it's the human in the loop and the training data that's really where CrowdFlower really
yes, but
matters.
enable.
Yeah, enablement. AI enablement maybe is a good way of saying it. How we became that platform, I guess. We started off with a very specific. Solution. So it was only language, and it was basically collecting training data for language-based applications. Mm-hmm. And so from that very specific point solution with a small number of customers, we've expanded into kind of all the different things that AI does. And I think really people say like, well, you sell to all these different industries, like you sell to like finance and retail and consumer internet and I think a lot of people say, well, how can you do that? How can a company that's only like 70, 80 people like CrowdFlower like afford to do that? And I think the reason that it works is because we actually sell into really one buyer. And he's like all over the walls here, right? We call him Data Dan, right? But we basically sell into data scientists. And so, I think what's really interesting about data science is like, a data scientist at Bloomberg has a lot of the same needs as a data scientist at Home Depot. You might not guess that, but actually, really, their lives are, really similar. I mean, they're both at the mercy of the data.
Yes.
They want clean data, right? I mean, that's like, something they both need. They're both trying to build accurate algorithms. Like when, for both of them, when their algorithms do different things, but when the algorithms fail, it like causes a problem, right? Like some business function breaks, right? So, they care a lot about the accuracy.
The consequences may differ, the scale may differ, but basically the business will suffer.
And so these guys, what I think is really cool about being a data scientist today is like, I think these folks, we see them bounce around into different industries, right? Because like, a lot of times our customer, I'll be surprised, like they'll go from, like working at like Uber to working at, Thomson Reuters, and it's like, wow.
And they will take the tools with them.
They always take the tools.
So if they work with you guys, then they need to clean up some new data. They will come and they will turn back to you and ask you to help with the new kind of data.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. So it's actually interesting that you mentioned that you started with language because this meetup used to be SF text, and what I found that essentially people often don't realize, especially newcomers to machine learning data science, that the machine learning algorithms are all the same, right? And so basically we had this real wealth of ML expertise, but a lot of people did not realize this. So once we started calling this data and AI, we suddenly doubled and tripled our audiences, and it's kind of cross-pollinating, but the core is the same. So I'm wondering, right, like, what's your take on this evolution? It used to be NLP, and then data science suddenly became cool, and that's not cool anymore, and AI is cool, right? So kind of, data science is like 2015. Right? So this is the year of AI, and right? And so what is your take, right? Like the methods don't change, but like the kind of people change, the kind of companies. Like, what do you see in terms of maybe customers kind of turning to you? Where is the trends? Kind of what's interesting in new developments?
Well, I mean, I would say one thing like for me, about the sort of like hype around AI is like I have to say like I love it. I mean, that's like the first thing that I really loved. And I was kind of disappointed when I came out of school and a lot of the stuff that you do like wasn't AI. So, I mean, I have to say like, for me, like AI becoming such a thing is, I think is awesome. And actually, I had a friend who was telling me, asked me the other day, a grad student, she was saying, like what's the difference between, like I don't understand the difference between like, the regression I do and machine learning. And I was kind of like, well, there's not much difference, actually. I think that's like kind of an astute observation, right? That it's sort of the same thing, but that doesn't mean that it's not like powerful and important and interesting. So I guess like I'm all for people being excited about AI and doing AI, and I think even I was a little skeptical about deep learning, and I've totally changed my mind after like trying some of it myself. I mean, I think like neural networks are doing some amazing stuff in vision at the very least, and it seems like cool stuff in text as well. So. So I think a lot of this stuff that's happening right now is actually like just legitimately really exciting. I mean, I think that comes with a whole bunch of irritating hype, but we've seen other hype cycles, and we're okay with that. I think like better to have hype than to have no hype.
Exactly. I mean, this is
nice meetups like yours.
This is it lifts all the boats. It's good for the context, right?
Yeah.
And apparently everybody needs data. So anecdotally again, I hear that basically essentially every big company going to AI realize the data problem is the key problem. So I hear that they all have teams working internally, and a lot of them are probably your customers. Right. So. But they don't talk about kind of this data enrichment. Data enrichment is happening, in closed chambers. So I wonder, right? What do you think of this? I mean, it's probably good for your business, right? Because basically, let's say Uber is kind of gonna do their own maps, right? Because who has the maps? Right? They called the key to location. And so, you know, Apple basically decoupled from Google Maps, and now Uber wants to do its own maps. And so they're all probably going to do the same thing with maps. So I'm curious how it reflects on your business. So do you, for instance, if you annotate maps for Uber or for Google, you develop expertise in this, right? So do you reuse this and then kind of now you have knowledge, let's say, how to quickly purify maps. So what can you make it like a map purification, a separate business? How does it work on your end? You know, what do you see?
Well, you know, so we can't share data between our customers for obvious reasons, right? But we do have a program where you can use our software for free if we can open up your data. And you know, the reason that I did that was I was actually really concerned that you know, with data not being open source and openly available, as data becomes kind of like, you know, oxygen for companies, like it's just so essential for companies, it made me worried that the best data sets were all closed. I actually think it's a humongous issue.
Yes.
I mean, I think like open source has done so many good things for software. I think there's a kind of analogous like thing going on in data, except that like it's all closed. And so, you know, what happens is like all the academics, they want to work on really big, really interesting data sets. They end up going into industry for that reason, right? And then you know, it just kind of perpetuates the cycle of more and more closed data. So you know, I think that's actually a major issue, and you know, we're trying to help that by opening up the data sets that we can. You know, in a way, it's good for business that people want to keep collecting the same data sets over and over. But I think, you know, it's one of those things like in a kind of like a bigger, longer view. I think there's like plenty of money to be made in data, and you know, the more successful people are, the more stuff that they'll do.
Yes, and new industries will come with new data, right? So, so do you see any solution to this? I mean, do you think people will start sharing more data? Are we kind of in the initial stage where everybody's hoarding data, and then people will realize like this data we can share? Or do you think that it will just continue more and more like this? And you know, big companies will amass proprietary data, and small companies will be like locked out because they don't have access to this.
I don't know. I think it's a really tricky issue, actually. I mean, I hope that we find a way to convince companies to open up data. I mean, I think like, you know, our government's doing a fantastic job of opening up data. I mean, I hope that you know, people can find incentives. You know, like I was pretty excited about, you know, even this is like a while ago, but remember the Netflix prize, right? When, you know, and that actually caused a lot of data to get open.
Yes.
But then, you know,
I tried to participate. Like I wrote a fortune program with OpenMP.
Nice. I mean, so I think it's really sad that they didn't do it the next year because there were privacy issues with, you know, with the
de-anonymization.
Yeah. So you know, I kind of I feel like that's a major issue that people really need to figure out, because I think like there's a major hidden cost to not having open data available like that. And you know, like everybody uses the Netflix data set. Like even now, you know, people do a recommendation engine, they always use the Netflix data set, right? And so, you know, probably like, you know, if companies realized that they could get so much work done on their data sets, you know, maybe they would open more data sets so people would work on them and give them free insights. Kind of like open source.
Right. Yeah, I'm wondering, you know, if kind of data will follow, right, open source, because open source did not materialize immediately, right? It materialized maybe 40 years, right, after the industry kind of developed. So, so I'm curious also about, you know, I mentioned Amazon obviously as an example, but you know, I think, you know, from my personal experience that you guys are called when, you know, that is proprietary and you have this NDA partners, right, where you can route data, and companies like Bloomberg, right, which have confidential information, can route it through you. So I'm curious, right, how you guys do this, and like there has never been a leak, at least, you know, I've not seen a leak, right? It's for data, and obviously it's gold, right? So how do you kind of convince companies to give you all this valuable data? How do you ensure that these providers will keep data secret? And how do you manage this process and convince people like Bloomberg, you know, with highest standard of confidentiality, to basically give you all this data to annotate?
Well, I think there's no, I mean, that's like data security is an issue where there's no silver bullet, right? I mean, there's just a lot of lead bullets, as they say, right? So, I mean, you know, I think, you know, I think that the way you convince a company like Bloomberg to give you data is actually just like consistently not having leaks. And you know, why we don't have leaks, I think, it's because we have good engineers building good software, and then we work with really good partners. I mean, I think like a data leak would put any of our NDA channels out of business. I mean, certainly like one data leak, we're never going to send our customers to one of these partners again. So, they're highly incentivized to make sure that stuff isn't leaking. And we feel really proud that we haven't had any leaks, but I don't want to encourage any hackers or anything to, to come try that.
Yeah, right? But I'm curious about the kind of the culture, right? Because it reflects on the culture. Because obviously, startups are people know who build them. That engineering culture is key to successful startup, right? And apparently, guys managed to build a data culture where the humans in the loop will will do the right thing. So I'm kind of curious, right? Do you have kind of training materials which you give to the partners? How do you kind of certify a partner, or do you kind of have long-term relationship? Is it like on an informal kind of people-to-people level? Or do you have any process? Do you have any manuals? Do you have any kind of training you send? Your managers of these companies, then they send the people. How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all of the above, right? So we it's a pretty long process to get started as one of our partners. I mean, I think the person that we have doing it is really excellent. I think I think one thing that's actually really benefited us is we tend to work with more partners that also have a social mission, and I think that tends to get higher quality companies. So for example, one of our partners gives work to Muslim women that in India have trouble like leaving. They can't go very, very far from home, right?
I remember she spoke at the Rich Data.
Yeah, Radha. Yeah. So she's a longtime partner, and when you talk to these women that do the work, they love CrowdFlower. They feel really connected to CrowdFlower. They even feel connected to our customers. I mean, it's funny, they know so much about American culture, because a lot of them have worked on CrowdFlower tasks, night and day for the last 4 years, right? So, they were telling me like, man, we've learned a lot about American fashion. We've learned about, I mean, just like all kinds of like interesting things that they know, and because they're the highest earners in their family. They're I mean, I guarantee these women will never leak anything on purpose, because it's such a meaningful thing for their lives and their families.
No, this is great. Yeah, I think it's really awesome, and I remember this from the summit, right? I think it's the great context you guys have there. So I think I'll probably wrap up with this question. This meetup is kind of the first in this kind of reinvigorated AI cycle we're doing, right? And we're gonna actually ramp up the tempo. We're gonna do 2 meetups a month, and we also want to do kind of systematic exploration of AI. So on the one hand, we want to have kind of horizontal exploration, so different verticals, different industries, and you guys probably see a lot of them. But on the other hand, we want to have this kind of build up as they do in science, but in the startup context, right? So we want to teach people. I think it's very appropriate that we start with lowest level, start with the data, give us the clean data, right?
Awesome.
So here we're at the bottom floor, right on the foundation. So, but the question, as experienced practitioner, right, what would be your advice to a lot of people getting into the AI field, right? So we want to kind of, teach them with hands-on talks, right, from different practitioners, and kind of build kind of a mini course, right? So if you were kind of learning AI, kind of if you tell like your previous self to learn AI knowing what you know right now, to be the most efficient person in this like least amount of time.
Yeah.
Right? Like how should you go about it? Like should you learn, linear algebra and calculus, and or should you just play with R and regression? Like what is kind of the most kind of efficient way to become a data scientist and start playing with all these AI tools?
That's a good question. I've actually been teaching a lot of data science classes these days, which is really fun. And I would say, you don't necessarily need to do the most efficient thing. Like, I mean, I'd say, like, I love math. I'm a math guy. I thought I was gonna be a mathematician, and so, for me, like, I love all the math. But I think if you want to be efficient, don't learn any math. You don't need any math, right? I mean, I think if you learn some Python and you learn, I mean, scikit-learn is such a fantastic piece of software. But I mean, I just like very practically, I would say, learn Python, learn scikit-learn, start building models, and then focus on the applications, because like I think there's so many machine learning people that get so kind of like narrow-mindedly, maniacally focused on the algorithms and making it like a % or two better. And I think like the real key to making machine learning work is not like, can you get from 80% to 81%, but it's like, how do you make 80% okay?
Yes.
Like
just get more data.
You get more data. That's one way, or maybe like make it in some way that like the mistakes are like okay or like fun. Like I mean, I think there's just like so much creativity. Like I actually think like a lot of this stuff is like, actually it's more human-computer interaction. Like you think about like, I could make like a 10% accurate self-driving car that could be really useful if that 10% of the time it's accurate is it's parallel parking. Right, a car that parallel parks for me, that's great. I love it, right? Yeah. If I make a 99% accurate self-driving car that doesn't know when it's going to crash, it's going to kill me immediately. Like 99%, that's like incredibly dangerous, right? So, I think like focusing on the accuracy, I mean, let the nerds like, nerd out on that. And I think if you're kind of just coming into the field, I think you can bring your like, whatever experience like you have to bear by building interesting applications in a field that you know particularly well.
It actually reminds me, right? I mean, when you mentioned this, I think startup people know that much better and easier thing to do is just ask the user, right?
Right.
So totally. People in the loop, right?
Yeah.
Instead of kind of trying to squeeze a percentage from a matrix, just get another row there.
Yeah.
And just ask them, right? Like do some kind of active learning and see what happens.
Totally. Right? Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to talking on great to start here.
Awesome.
Thanks.